I am joined by Senate Appropriations Chair Sarah Anthony and Greg VanWoerkom, State Representative from West Michigan, who chairs one of the House Higher Ed. Is it higher ed or which appropriations?
Medicaid and behavioral health.
Medicaid and behavioral health. I apologize, so I'm blanking out here, but so yeah, let's start with Medicaid. Okay, right now this is a big one right now. What changes does the Senate budget do to Medicaid that the House Republicans are claiming it's going to knock 60,000 people off of Medicaid?
Yeah, nothing. So first of all, for folks who don't understand the budget process, we build our budgets typically based on January numbers, based on the revenue that we currently have in place. And then after May, we adjust those numbers together between the governor's team, the House, and the Senate. And so the adjustments would go across the board, whether we're talking about the DHHS budget, road funding, all of it is based on the latest numbers. So a collective exercise under normal times would look at what's happening at the federal level related to Medicaid and every other issue in the state budget and then adjust accordingly. Unfortunately, we're not able to start that exercise because our friends in the House have yet to send over real budgets, real numbers that we can start to adjust together.
Representative VanWoerkom, to start with that, why has the House not passed a budget in the traditional sense yet?
So we're taking a deliberate approach this year. We've got a lot of new members. We're looking at what the trifecta did the past term and kind of unraveling that. As you may have seen, I'm on the Medicaid and behavioral health budget. We've put actually 3 different people as chairs in the DHH budget because we're just looking at taking a harder, deeper dive into what has been passed last term and what we want to do this term. So it's a different process, but we wanted to see what the correct numbers would be in May so that we could adjust and take a deeper dive and take a look at what's all in this budget, what's been created the past terms. And there's a concern of where the state is. If we are going to go into recession or have less money come in, that we wanted to take a more deliberative approach than the standard process of passing something before the CREC came out.
How do you all arrive at this number that their budget is going to cut Medicaid for 60,000 people?
So we, as somebody that's doing the Medicaid budget, for the past 5 months, we hear all this doom and gloom about Medicaid and what the federal government's going to do. And even the Senate had a hearing on it. The governor put out a report on it of just kind of putting this scare out there of what's going to happen to Medicaid. And as I'm seeing it, it's not actually coming into fruition of what they are talking about. There's going to be some work requirements possibly if the feds actually pass a budget. It's not this thing that's been put out of all these cuts that are going to happen. And then, as the good senator was saying, they passed a budget that didn't adjust for what the actuarial studies say is going to be the rate for Medicaid. So that number doesn't match what the actuaries are saying. That's the discussion right now we're having as it relates to a supplemental of what the actual dollars were and what actually needs to be there. So it's a lot about what's happening on the Medicaid population affects what the state budget is.
And I'll also say, just to like cut to the chase, even the Detroit News just recently reported that the House put out a resolution that had those fake numbers around these drastic cuts to Medicaid and how the Senate's budget would rob Michiganders and put us in a deficit. Fundamentally just false. That it was just full of misinformation, and I think that ultimately, as we now get closer and closer to a July 1 deadline, we have to stop having concepts of plans or internal discussions. We have to get in a room. And in the last few years, what we have been able to do is pass bipartisan budgets that have been balanced because we've worked together. And yes, we were of the same party, but to be clear, I've been in those rooms. We didn't agree on everything. We didn't get everything right, but we had the courage to work things out together and not, posture in a way that has been unproductive. And with so much uncertainty at the federal level, I hear from everyone, all walks of life, all across the state, just get in a room and start working it through. But we can't point to any specifics right now because we don't have anything to react to. So I appreciate the deliberations, and I just ask our colleagues in the House to deliberate faster, to read faster, to work on solutions with us and not just poke holes at concepts that we've put forward. The governor's team has done it, the Senate has done it. There is literally no excuse.
And I think discussions are happening. They're still having discussions.
Well, I'm the Senate Appropriations Chair. No one discusses.
I think that's why do a conference like this. There's lots of discussions that are happening. There's lots of points of differences. There's things that are happening, whether it's the front and center of having a bill and going piece by piece. That's another conversation. But we're still working on budget and the process that's moving forward.
But getting back to the federal tax bill, one big beautiful bill, as the president's calling it, the most latest analysis is that there's almost $2 billion impact to the state of Michigan. I mean, that's out of 17 billion general fund, roughly. I mean, how would we possibly make that up? We have
to start working together, right? The first thing is to look at specific numbers, get in a room, and figure out what our priorities are. If we were just to look at it, all of the concepts that the House has put forward, you would think that roads and law enforcement would be the only things we need to do in the state. But the reality is that when we look at the whole that will be left in our budget, here at the state level, we have to start making at least modest gains towards addressing everything else in our budget. I mean, we're sitting here at the Mackinac Policy Conference. We have the business community, we have the higher ed community here, and yet the concepts that we have to point to from the House is gutting our business attraction lines, looking at higher ed, and instead of funding both operations as well as scholarships, trying to rebrand, things that we've already done. Ultimately, if we want to have real discussions of ways that we safeguard people, safeguard healthcare, as well as make sure we're competitive in terms of business attraction tools and educating our kids, it starts with having a real budget on the table. So all we have to point to is concepts of plans, and I think our people deserve more. The business community that we're here with, they need predictability, they need stability. But when we point to gutting incentives, gutting all of our tools, we cannot disarm in this moment. But again, when there's uncertainty, you feel it. I think folks feel it even at this conference. Yeah. People feel like there is just no predictability right now, and that's a dangerous place to be.
So you're touching on the House Republican road plan that has get rid of SOAR, the I call cash for jobs incentives, and then also get rid of the mega tax credits, which is about $500 to $600 million a year in refunds that go predominantly to 3 automakers in Southeast Michigan. What's the case for keeping them? Because Republicans are just framing this as this is corporate welfare giveaways, and we'd love to have a campaign argument about that next year.
And look, I'm not like the biggest SOAR proponent, right? I think that we do need incentives, we do need tools to make sure that we're still competitive. But let's get in a room and rebrand it. Let's talk about what's working and what's not. The reality is that SOAR was never perfect. It's something that we had one-time federal funding that could prop up our economic tools. But if it's not working anymore, let's get to the table and find out something new. But I think small businesses and large businesses can agree that we do need some supports from the state in order to continue to be competitive. But again, without specifics, I don't know what the House actually wants to do with that.
Representative, does SOAR need to be rebranded?
I don't think SOAR, just putting a different sticker on it is going to help what SOAR has done. We haven't seen the success that it was sold to us as. I think SOAR is definitely on the table of relooking at how we do economic development in the state. And we've been burned enough times on what's been promised and what's actually been delivered. That's why that's on the table right now.
It's on the menu.
On the menu.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
Nothing's on the table right now because they're not engaging. So yeah.
Okay. So what's it going to take to get you all to start trying to work on a deal? I mean, school districts are looking for some direction by July 1. They got to hire teachers. They got to make contractual deals with teachers, pay raises, bonuses, all the things, the functions of a business of schools. They need to do it in a 2-month period before kids come back around Labor Day. So are you all going to get the K-12 budget done before July 1st?
I try to remind everyone that everything has to be negotiated by the three, by the executive, the House, and the Senate. 2 of the 3 legs have presented balanced school aid budgets, and we're waiting to make those decisions. But the House can't comport itself to say it's my way or the highway, that you have to do it this way or we won't engage. That's what toddlers do. I cannot negotiate with unreasonable actors, and so I live in Lansing, so I'm always in the Capitol. So I am ready to start negotiating. I will sit in a room alone if I have to, but I have to look superintendents in the eye. I have to look at principals and teachers who are looking for predictability. And right now, they can point to real investments in our budget. They have nothing to point to from the House.
Representative.
So I don't think unreasonable is quite accurate. We put out a proposal on the close of books, which wasn't settled when we left last term. So we put out the close of books that put a per pupil foundation allowance out there, saying this is where we're going to go. And I saw the speaker mention it yesterday as well of what we want to do. And
you want to get rid of
it was actually my bill that put the July 1st deadline, as you may recall.
Yes.
After
the meltdown of 2017 or 19.
That's right.
Yes,
so I put it was my bill that did the July 1st. So I'm all about the good governance. I recognize that the schools have their fiscal year on July 1st. I'd love to see something for the schools on July 1st. That's why we put in there a foundation allowance so they had the base when we put the close of books bill out there.
Do we need to change the fiscal years so the state is aligned with the school districts?
I'm open to whatever's going to work. This is what I'll say, though, and I appreciated your bill related to July 1. I like to actually follow the law. So it would be nice if we could actually get in a room in order to meet that July 1 deadline. But again, until we have not statements, not press conferences, not concepts, but actual numbers to start working through, unfortunately, the leadership that our education community is seeking from us, we can't get to that place if we're not willing to engage.
Okay. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, Senator, is Speaker Hall calls you the ultimate Lansing insider. I don't know if this is because you live in Lansing or that you actually are a Lansing insider. What do you make of this sort of name calling? Or
my mama taught me not to call people names, so I won't return the volley, but I'm from Lansing. I'm born and raised in the community. I think there was just a survey that said that I think Speaker Hall amongst Lansing insiders is the most popular. So I don't engage in those kind of childish games, but I've tried to build a reputation for being a serious policymaker, someone that can work across the aisle and get a deal done. And so regardless if he thinks I'm one of the good old boys, I would think differently.
Representative VanWoerkom, is there, before we get to the next election cycle, which is, seems like it's coming soon.
They always do.
If not already here, what is something outside of the budget? What's a priority for you want to get passed?
That's a great question. I've been spending so much time on the Medicaid behavioral health budget that it's tough to pick your head up out and look on the policy stuff. But last term, I was pretty effective on economic development bills, the R&D tax credit,
yep.
The entrepreneurship program. From being in the minority of a trifecta, I was still able to get some things accomplished. One of the things I'm looking at is the ballot process. And it's not one that's talked a lot, but
the what?
Of getting a ballot proposal up and the signatures and what these proposals have become. I find a lot of times when I come back after an election, it's cleaning up some of these ballot proposals that have come by. And Michigan is just a target-rich area because it's easy to get on the ballot here in Michigan. And I think we need to take a look at that and what that process is because of some of the issues that have come up because of whether these proposals have been properly vetted over time. So taking a look at that, we'll see if we come up with something.
Okay. Well, we are out of time, but I really appreciate it. State Representative Greg VanWoerkom, and Senate Appropriations Chair Sarah Anthony. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Hopefully you all can just figure out this budget here in the next few weeks.
Let's go on the porch. Let's figure it out. All right.
Okay, I'm
Thank
Chad
you.
Livengood, the Detroit News. Thank you.